Amidst the escalating violence and international interventions in Syria, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, the leader of the prominent Syrian rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham (HTS), has issued a statement expressing his deep frustrations over the ongoing challenges faced by the opposition forces. Al-Jolani's remarks reflect a growing sense of disillusionment and urgency among the rebel factions, who have long struggled with the absence of substantial international support. His statement specifically pointed to the lack of real backing from foreign countries, as well as the enduring pressure from both internal and external forces that have greatly complicated the situation on the ground. Al-Jolani's statement comes at a time of heightened tensions in Syria, where the conflict has entered its 13th year with no clear resolution in sight. The Syrian opposition, which has long sought to overthrow President Bashar al-Assad and challenge his regime's stranglehold on power, is now facing immense difficulties, particularly as foreign military interventions continue to reshape the battlefield. Most notably, the airstrikes carried out by Israel and the United States have further complicated the already volatile situation. These strikes, aimed at weakening Assad's military capabilities and preventing the entrenchment of foreign influence in Syria, have also had the unintended consequence of exacerbating the suffering of the Syrian civilian population and strengthening the resolve of the Assad regime. In his statement, al-Jolani highlighted what he perceives as the stark absence of reliable and consistent international support for the rebels. He lamented that despite their ongoing struggle, no foreign country has truly committed to assisting the opposition in a way that would lead to a meaningful change in the course of the war. This observation has been echoed by many other opposition figures, who have grown increasingly frustrated with the limited nature of the support they receive. The United States, which has been involved in Syria primarily through its efforts to combat the Islamic State, ISIS, has provided some military aid to opposition groups. However, this assistance has been largely restricted to counter-terrorism operations, and Washington has shown little interest in fully backing the opposition in their broader fight against Assad's government. The U.S. has maintained a policy of non-intervention in the civil war, preferring to focus on limited objectives such as defeating ISIS, and more recently, countering Iranian influence in the region. Al-Jolani's comments point to a crucial aspect of the Syrian conflict: the lack of unified foreign backing for the opposition forces. While various regional actors, such as Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, have provided varying levels of support to different rebel factions throughout the course of the war, this support has often been fragmented and inconsistent. The Syrian opposition has also faced internal divisions, with multiple competing factions often clashing over strategies, leadership, and political goals. These internal divisions, combined with the lack of strong external support, have left the rebel forces in a weakened position, struggling to maintain territory and hold off the combined forces of the Assad regime, Russian-backed forces, and Iran's paramilitary units. The growing sense of abandonment within the rebel groups is compounded by the intensifying military actions of Israel and the U.S. in Syria. Israel, in particular, has ramped up its airstrikes against Syrian military targets, focusing on dismantling Assad's air and naval capabilities, which are crucial to the regime's ability to project power and defend against external threats. According to reports, Israel has destroyed almost all of Syria's air and naval assets, effectively crippling the Syrian military's ability to defend itself from foreign airstrikes and naval interventions. While Israel justifies these strikes as part of its broader strategy to prevent the consolidation of Iranian influence in Syria and the establishment of Iranian military infrastructure near its borders, these actions have had a devastating impact on the balance of power in the region. For al-Jolani and other rebel leaders, Israel's military campaign represents an additional layer of complication. On the one hand, the strikes have weakened the Assad regime's military capabilities, making it more vulnerable to opposition efforts. On the other hand, the airstrikes have also effectively destroyed the strategic infrastructure that the rebels could have used to their advantage in the fight against Assad. This dynamic leaves the rebels in an increasingly precarious situation, as they are caught between the external pressure from Israel's strikes and the overwhelming military might of the Assad regime, backed by Russian and Iranian forces. At the core of al-Jolani's statement is the belief that Syria must fight its own war. He emphasized that the Syrian people, and particularly the Syrian rebels, should not have to rely on foreign intervention to determine the outcome of their struggle. This sentiment reflects the desire of many within the opposition to regain sovereignty and control over their own future, without interference from foreign powers that have their own geopolitical agendas. Al-Jolani's call for Syria to fight its own war underscores a growing frustration among many Syrian opposition groups that foreign powers, particularly the US and Israel, have become more involved in the conflict for their own strategic interests rather than the cause of the Syrian people. Al-Jolani's statement also implicitly critiques the broader international community's failure to resolve the Syrian conflict. While the UN has made multiple efforts to mediate peace talks, there has been little tangible progress toward a political resolution. The Assad regime, with the backing of Russia and Iran, has maintained a hardline stance against opposition groups, while the opposition remains divided, and foreign powers continue to pursue their own conflicting interests in the region. The result has been a protracted and brutal war that has displaced millions of Syrians, left large parts of the country in ruins, and further deepened sectarian divisions. The international strikes, particularly those conducted by Israel, have also fueled anti-Western sentiment within Syria. Many Syrians, especially those in the rebel-controlled areas, view these foreign interventions as part of a broader campaign against Syria's sovereignty and independence. While the Syrian government and its allies argue that foreign powers are trying to impose their will on Syria, the opposition is left in a difficult position, where they are both victimized by foreign strikes and abandoned by the very international community they hoped would come to their aid. Al-Jolani's statement, therefore, not only reflects the dire military and political challenges faced by the Syrian opposition but also signals a growing desire for self-reliance in the fight against the Assad regime. As the conflict enters a new phase, with Israel's military actions and the continued foreign intervention, it remains to be seen whether the Syrian rebels will be able to regain momentum or whether they will be further marginalized in a war that seems to have no end in sight.